I'm not on the side. Are you recording?
Yeah, okay. This is the thing, I never know what I'm really going to start with. All right. Welcome back. This week we have got, no, I need to start that again because I don't really know what we've got. We've got a whole lot of things that have really done my head in because these are the headlines I choose according to how far and how deep they do my head in. We had a solar eclipse, my apologies, now my whole vocabulary is being eclipsed. We had a solar eclipse a few days ago. This is a color eclipse. Welcome to. I'm going to go straight into it. From The Guardian, I don't know how. Black Kansas City teen shot after going to wrong address to pick up siblings. By now, you know that this is Ralph Yarl, and you know what has happened to him. Ralph Yarl, 16, was shot twice on Thursday night, first through the front door of the house, and a second time when he lay wounded on the ground, simply because he was at the wrong house. The shooter, the manslaughterer, I'm calling him, was then released, which is when everyone went ballistic. At a press conference on last Sunday, Stacey Graves, white chief of the Kansas City Police Department, defended the release of the then unnamed homeowner, citing Missouri law that states a person can be held only 24 hours before being formally charged or released. But she said her department was working quickly to prepare evidence for the Clay County prosecutor as its felony investigation continued. We recognize the frustration this can cause. I want everyone to know that I am listening and I understand the concern we are receiving from the community. Propaganda, public relations, from ABC Australia, Wednesday 19th of April. US police charge Andrew Lester over shooting of black teen Ralph Yarl. So that headline should actually read, US police charge old white Andrew Lester over shooting of black teen Ralph Yarl. Bond for Lester was set at US $200,000, which is approximately 296,000 Australian, which he posted within a few hours of turning himself into authorities. Just to point out that when bail is set, it's 10% that gets paid. That's somewhat easier to rustle up when you're a homeowner. I can tell you there was a racial component to the case, Clay County prosecutor Zachary Thompson said, without elaborating during a news conference to announce the charges. Prosecutors have not filed hate crime charges, which, get this, carry lesser penalties in Missouri than the 2 counts Mr. Lester faces, Mr. Thompson added. So even though we know it's a hate crime, the hate crime actually carries lesser sentencing. So that's what they're not going for. Mr. Lester fired 2 shots through a glass door with a .32 caliber revolver, the prosecutor said. Ralph, who was struck in the head and an arm, did not cross the threshold, Mr. Thompson said, adding it did not appear any words were exchanged in the encounter. But Ralph told police in an interview at the hospital where he was treated that the man said to him, "Don't come around here." Local media reported, citing court documents. Now, this is an recent article from Washington Post. What we know about who shot Ralph Yarl, Kalen Gillis, and Peyton Washington. Within days of each other, there were shootings all throughout the U.S. This excerpt I'm reading is primarily about Ralph Yarl and Lester. The 84-year-old military veteran and former airline mechanic has faced backlash in the days since the incident. Among those critics is his grandson, Clint Ludwig, who told the Kansas City Star that he was appalled and disgusted over the shooting. Lester pleaded not guilty on Wednesday and has been released on bond, as read earlier. As part of Lester's bond, he must surrender his concealed carry permit and passport and cannot leave the state of Missouri without permission from his bond supervisor. The next court appearance is scheduled for June 1st. I am really worried about what's going to happen in the states on any given day, but any of these dates are scary. S. Lee Merritt, one of the Yarl family's attorneys, posted a photo on Twitter of him and Ralph, who is now recovering at home. Merritt told reporters that while Yarl, who plays bass clarinet, my apologies, at Staley High School, will be unable to play at an upcoming competition, he has an invitation to perform at the White House. Apologies if this is not coming out straight. I'm really emotionally affected by all of this. To think that people in this day and age cannot even walk to a wrong house. And if you read the story on Washington Post, the other two, Peyton Washington and the other girl, they were just sitting in their cars and not doing anything. Goodness me. A GoFundMe campaign for Yal surpassed 3.3 million in funds raised by midday Thursday, and we have provided the GoFundMe link. Mr. Merritt tweeted, "How the bullet in his, Ralph's, head did not cause more extensive damage is truly a miracle." This story is about the damage at America's core, and I'm going to continue. Now, this is from ABC USA. Governor DeSantis signs controversial death penalty legislation. And this is the story and the deep dive that has really got me shaken up even more because, okay, as I read, I hope you can understand why I'm just getting really emotionally affected by it all. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Thursday signed a bill that will allow juries to impose the death sentence, even if all 12 jurors do not agree. He is also likely to approve a second bill passed by the lawmakers on Tuesday that would make sexual battery, rape, of a child under age 12 a death penalty offense, which some of us are thinking, why isn't it already? The governor, who is rumored to be considering a presidential run, has publicly pushed for both bills, legislation that opponents say violates the U.S. Constitution and could lead to wrongful executions. Now, those two in the same sentence aren't on the same side, because what is U.S. Constitution, which we'll get to in a moment, isn't really on the side of humanity always. It chooses life according to very weird circumstances. But from CNN, headline, DeSantis signs bill eliminating unanimous jury decisions for death sentences. DeSantis signed a bill Thursday that will no longer require juries to agree unanimously to recommend death sentences, reducing the number of jurors needed to recommend a death sentence to the lowest threshold of any state with capital punishment. SB, Senate Bill 450, reduces the number of jurors needed to recommend a death sentence from 12 to 8. Going back to the ABC story, a capital defense lawyer told ABC News the newly signed legislation would discount black and brown jurors' voices and make Florida an extreme state with the lowest threshold to sentence offenders to death. If you steal a pack of gum in Florida, you are entitled to a unanimous jury determination of your guilt. And so to have anything less to take someone's life is just a straight violation of the Constitution, the lawyer said. Now, back to the CNN story. The bill was prompted by a jury's decision last year to not hand the death penalty to Parkland school shooter Nicholas Cruz. A jury recommended Cruz receive a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Instead, for the February 2018 shooting at Florida's Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. One of the 12 jurors in Cruz's trial, 3 voted against the death penalty. Who and why? Who is going to get them killed? Why? Oh my gosh. Why? Why would you want to keep this oxygen waster around? Because of what? And then decide that somebody else's life is this. Okay, I can't get into this. This is a really very contentious, very controversial, very sensitive topic. Back to the ABC story, the other bill. The other bill, which would make child rape a crime punishable by death, would also violate the Constitution. The Supreme Court took up the issue in 2008 and ruled that it would violate the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. The lawyer De Liberato, we can all agree that child rape is probably the most horrific crime we can think of, but the issue here is that it has already been decided that it's unconstitutional to invoke the death penalty in these cases. Now, I'm going to read from something else. I'm reading from the Death Penalty Information Center. United States Supreme Court Decisions, 2007-2008 term. The U.S. Supreme Court struck down as unconstitutional a Louisiana statute that allowed the death penalty for the rape of a child where the victim did not die. So if the victim survives. In Kennedy versus Louisiana, the court held that all such laws where the crime against an individual involved no murder was not in keeping with the national consensus restricting the death penalty to the worst offences. As a result, the only two people sentenced to death for this crime in the modern capital punishment era no longer face execution. Both were sentenced under the Louisiana statute that was found unconstitutional. No one is on death row for any offence not involving murder. So, murder is the highest and the lowest crime punishable by death. Let's not forget that there has been many stories of the people, primarily black American men, who were unfairly tried and given this sentence, and no fuss for them. Back to ABC. Florida has the highest death row population of any state that is actively carrying out executions, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. Since 1976, 101 Floridians on death row have been executed. 30 have been exonerated in that time, more than any other state. This is 30 after the fact, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. Many of those inmates were convicted by non-unanimous juries. All the links are there for further reading. Go through them. It's astonishing. I can't even pun right now. But we're going to go to B&T. Go woke, go broke. Bud Light's parent company loses $6 billion in 6 days following trans backlash. Bud Light's decision to team with trans activist and comic Dylan Mulvaney appears to be getting worse by the day, with news the brewer's parent company has lost $6 billion Australian in market capitalization in just 6 days as customers continue a boycott of the brand. Anheuser-Busch was founded by German Americans in 1852 and is currently owned by a Belgian-Brazilian partnership company that seems to own everything to do with global beer and brewing. I mean, they own Corona, even though Corona is still made in Mexico. Bud Light is America's biggest selling beer, with 14% of the overall beer market. Yeah, they know what they're doing. Back to the story. Earlier this month, Bud Light entered into a partnership with Mulvaney, 27, who is currently on hormones to transition to a woman. The promotion included a $15,000 prize and a personalized beer can with Mulvaney's face and a message on the top reading, "Cheers to 365 days of being a woman," to commemorate a year since she began her gender transition. You know, this seems to me like virtue signaling marketing or woke marketing. I don't really know. I feel like that Dylan Mulvaney is being exploited, but if she's in on it, then okay. And but the other part of it, what women are saying is that when was the last time we got celebrated a womb woman on a Bud Light beer can? No thanks. But it's also a bit more convoluted than that. But listen to this. This is why I am all shook up right now from Sky News. And of course it's, Sky News. Leah Thomas and Dylan Mulvaney making a mockery of the trans issue. Piers Morgan says, so by now we'll go, yeah, of course he says that. But listen to this. The reality is the people that are suffering, I think, are the unknown trans people who I think are being exposed to a constant mockery through these kinds of things. Okay, get to the point, Morgan. By the likes of Thomas crushing people in the pool and Mulvaney making a mockery of the way women wear sports bras, because, of course, Piers Morgan would know how women wear sports bras, unless, of course, he needs to wear one himself. Anyway, and do gym work and so on. All of that is unhelpful to regular trans people just trying to get by and wanting to have a bit of fairness and equality. Now he's for fairness and equality. Is Piers trying to tell us something about himself? The moment you try to get a new unfairness and inequality for any group of people at the expense of another group, you lose it. Piers Morgan says this, and you know what? I'm going to have to agree with what that last bit of what he says. But this is, of course, he's got his own agenda, and I don't ever trust anything he says, but because the voices you hear right now fighting for our rights, as in women's rights, are the voices of anti-trans rights, and those are two very different sets of voices. The women who are pro-trans rights, we are not saying anything about how we feel, particularly women of color who are being pushed further and further down that intersectionality ladder, because we don't want to be seen as what they have termed TERFs. We are not. We are absolutely for our trans sisters. We are very inclusive with our womanhood. My womanhood certainly is inclusive, but it's conditional. And that one of the conditions is that I feel that no longer should women with wombs who are born with wombs and assigned women who are women, feel that way and identify as women, we should not have to clarify nor quantify our womanhood. In the same way, I am quite happy to call myself Indo-Fijian. I am from Fiji, but I am not Fijian. I'm of Indian ancestry, and therefore I am going to clarify I am Indo-Fijian. That's what I'm saying for the moment. I am pro-trans right, but I am pro-women, and these people, particularly these white people, and particularly these white women, they are not pro-women, okay? They didn't say anything until their rights. Likewise, the people who are against vaccinations. They didn't say anything until they had to, they got directly affected. And I'm not listening to any of those people. We're going to move on. Just very quick things from Al Jazeera. Papua rebels ambush Indonesian troops looking for kidnapped pilot. And another headline, why Indonesia fails to address the West Papua conflict. Those are two stories that you really should read. It's a pretty good understanding of what's happening because it is atrocious. The country's government has focused on containing rather than resolving a crisis with roots in a dubious referendum. So just quickly from ABC Australia, El Nino in 2023 becoming more likely, which would result in the dry, warm weather across eastern Australia. Just read that as to what that would mean for us. And yes, warmer days, but also it's a little bit scary. From Hindustan Times, Diljit Dosanjh rocks Coachella with Punjabi songs. Fans call it a proud historic moment. You know, before we have the numbers to upend that table, we need to host the tables. So we need to stop putting these things and exalting these things and putting all the American things on a pedestal, and we need to make our places, stages, and things covetable. Like how Chanel has made their handbag covetable. It's now going to cost you $10,000 for a Chanel handbag, and because they're saying it's the ultimate investment handbag, but the brand's prices have got nothing to do with the quality and very much to do with the cool cachet and perception of it. It's brand and loyalty and pricing power. It's all about perception. And you may think you make something out of reach and all of a sudden everyone wants it. And that may not be the goal that motivates people, certainly, but when people make it, these things validate the journey. Because of course, now for instance, what's that guy's name from LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, Louis Vuitton. He's the richest guy in the world. He has surpassed, I can't even find this information now, Bernard Arnault is considered the richest man in the world, passing Tesla and Twitter owner Elon Musk. And you know who's making them rich? You. Not me. I'm not making them rich. You are, although I'm back on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, follow me there because I'm back there because, I don't know, I'm silly. Listen, I'm going to give you a gift. This is because life is a luxury in the states of America. So this is from Moody Private Client. As I said, this is not a headline, it's a gift. Is now the right time to renounce your U.S. citizenship? Dear states of Americans, you have choices to make. If you can, get out of there. And if you can help others get out of there, do it. Go to an African country. As Duane and I have said before, team up and make Wakanda a reality. Indians, go back, restore your country to its former greatness. And the Chinese, just take over the world already, but be kind and Bruce Lee about it. Speaking of Mr. Lee, please join us on Video Fly as we talk about Warrior, based on the writings and a treatment by Bruce Lee, co-executive produced by his daughter Shannon Lee. It's historical-based art, real heart work, as is everything else we do. See you next week. I hadn't finished telling the story properly, so I think I'm going to now. What I was talking had gone from Diljit Dosanjh rocks Coachella with Punjabi songs and fans call it a proud historic moment. I'm very happy for the musicians who get to headline at Coachella and perform at Coachella. It's a big deal in terms of music industry world. But if it's because it's Coachella in the States of America, that to me is, elevating white stream pedestals is just not my thing. And I think we still really need to concentrate on elevating everybody else's. I'm not saying down with those platforms. Keep them, but elevate everybody else to have an equitable, equal level of prestige. And this is what I'm saying with the Chanel handbag. Why aren't all the other labels of the other countries and cultures and races as exclusive as a Chanel handbag? I mean, as it says here, because I've never drunk that Kool-Aid, and I think I had said that before, other than higher costs, what more could be pushing Chanel's handbag prices higher? There's the demand and limited supply. But part of it could also be about wanting to maintain a position of exclusivity within the luxury market. And that's what I said about brand positioning and perception. Making something out of your reach makes it that even more exclusive and even more comfortable, particularly in this world. because I was also reading from Women's Wear Daily Business, which I skipped over to get to that little information about Bernard Arnault. So I'm reading now. As thousands of people took to the streets of Paris on the 12th day of demonstrations against President Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms, protesters forced their way into the headquarters of luxury giant LVMH, Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton. Demonstrators pushed their way into the building at 22 Avenue Montaigne. Protesters, many wearing CGT, and that's the General Confederation of Labour Union vests, were seen bashing down the glass doors of the building while holding red flares and waving flags. Now, that was only for about 10 minutes, so it was just like a whole lot of blustery noise in the lobby of Louis Vuitton. It's like, okay, guys, it's like in Shrek, all the going after the ogres. I don't know. But they're genuinely angry because this is why. The pension reform bill would raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 years old. The increase in retirement age is meant to reflect a difference in life expectancy for various generations. In the 80s, the average life expectancy was 74. Now it's 82. Now, this is the same elitist thinking that proclaimed red wine healthy for everyone back in the 60s and 70s, or whenever that, survey was taken, that, no, a glass of red wine is what keeps the French healthy. Yeah, sure, that everyone who eats cheese and cream and butter every day without abandon and with glee won't suffer. Eat without guilt. Eat the best of things. And then you are what you eat. And that's great if, what you are is rich, and you have the money to go and buy those things that can make you what you eat. Because it is true, you've got to eat without guilt. When you eat for pleasure, it goes to the right places. Your brain says, don't store it for future use because you're going to starve. It just says go to the right places. But it's terrible that healthcare is a luxury now. Listen, I'm reading this. This is why everyone's protesting in France, everywhere, the world over. Everyone's protesting. So the protests comes just a day after the Louis Vuitton Dion Givenchy parent company reported revenues rose 17% to 21.4 billion euros for the first quarter of 2023, and we're only in April. Despite a geopolitical and economic environment which remains certain, which means the rest of us are worrying about paying bills and the cost of living. And we're thinking, living, expensive, dying, let's weigh up the costs of a coffin. Going back to the story, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Bernard Arnault is considered the richest man in the world, passing Tesla and Twitter owner Elon Musk with an estimated net worth of $211 billion. He has added $53 billion to his net worth over the last year with the soaring sales at his luxury brands. That's on you. Bye.